Get ready to fight. Today we're going to talk about how to plan out and execute your combat scenes, so stick around. By the way, my name is Brandon McNulty. I'm the author of Bad Parts, also the author of Entry Wounds, and welcome to my writing channel. A bunch of my subscribers have asked me to do a video on fight scenes, so I thought today we'd hammer away at the basics. We'll talk about the 3 key questions you need to ask before writing a fight scene, then I'll give you some examples to illustrate what I mean, and we'll wrap things up with some quick tips for planning out an effective fight scene. And a lot of what I'll be discussing today comes from the book Fight Right by Carla Hotch, and this is a writer's guide for creating believable fight scenes. It's got a lot of great content on different fighting styles and injuries, and it helps you figure out how characters should react in the heat of battle. So if you want to check out this book, I'll link to it in the description below. But let's start off by answering the question, what is a fight scene? And that might sound like a silly question, but I want us all on the same page. And a fight scene is an action scene in which characters engage in physical combat. And it can be small, meaning like a one-on-one fist fight, or it can be large, like a shootout between heroes and villains, or it can be massive, like a grand-scale battle scene. And regardless of the size, you'll probably have different fighting styles like hand-to-hand combat, weapons-based combat, or you might even have combat involving vehicles or machines. Now, while planning out your fight scenes, you're going to want to ask 3 important questions, and they're very simple questions. They're why, where, and who. With the question of why, we're asking what is at stake for both sides. What do they have to gain and to lose? Are they fighting for money, for respect, to protect themselves, to protect a loved one, to escape danger? Whatever the reason is, it will determine the intensity and the speed of the fight, as well as potential advantages. And when we're talking about advantages, we're usually talking about a character fighting harder out of passion or desperation. And let me give you some examples to show you different levels of intensity. In Fight Club, the narrator and Tyler Durden get into their first fight out of curiosity.
What do you want me to do? You just want me to hit you?
Come on, do me this one favor.
Why?
Why? I don't know why. I don't know. Never been in a fight. You?
No, but that's a good thing.
No, it is not. How much can you know about yourself? You've never been in a fight. So come on, hit me before I lose my nerve. Oh, that was perfect.
The intensity and speed are at a minimum here, and there's no real desperation or passion here. They're simply exploring new territory rather than fighting for survival. Now compare that to Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul from Star Wars. This is the polar opposite. Both men are engaged in fierce combat. They're determined to murder each other, and their duel is intense and fast-paced, and Obi-Wan fights with passion after watching his mentor die. Now, if you want an example of a fight where motivation makes a huge difference, look at Rocky 1. Rocky enters the ring as a heavy underdog against Apollo Creed. You have a club boxer versus the heavyweight champion of the world. In theory, this shouldn't even be close, but Rocky is fighting for self-respect, fighting for self-worth, while Apollo is fighting simply to entertain his fans, just to make some money. And this fight means everything to Rocky, and that gives him an advantage here. It allows him to rise to the challenge. Second question to ask yourself is where? And this is an important question because the fight's environment can create advantages and disadvantages. Sometimes the size of the area or its layout can benefit one of the combatants, and things like weather and terrain can make a huge difference. And even objects that are part of the setting can be used as weapons in order to gain an upper hand. Now in the book Fight Right, Carla Hotch discusses the Battle of Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings. And this is, of course, the climactic battle from the 2 towers, and we have a situation here where the good guys are heavily outnumbered by Saruman's army. And despite the long odds, the good guys are able to hold off the attack thanks to the fortress's structural layout as well as the surrounding terrain. And if we take another look at the Darth Maul fight, the layout here plays a critical role. This battle starts with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon fighting against Darth Maul until a force field blocks out Obi-Wan. That forces Qui-Gon to face Darth Maul one-on-one. Eventually Darth Maul defeats him. Then later on, Obi-Wan faces Maul alone, and Maul sends him down a shaft before Obi-Wan uses his environment to buy himself some time before coming up with a way to defeat his enemy. And the third question to ask is who? And this involves the character's size, strength, ability, and skill level. Larger characters will usually have an advantage in terms of strength and reach, and this is what makes Ivan Drago so imposing in Rocky IV. Not only is he a force of destruction, but he towers over his opponents with long arms that can strike from a distance. Smaller characters, meanwhile, are typically at a disadvantage, although they may be more agile or they may have greater control over their movements. Now, just because a character is smaller than his opponent, that doesn't mean it's game over. And here's a fight scene that I absolutely love from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones faces off against this bald guy who insists on hand-to-hand combat. And it's obvious that Indy is outmatched, so what does he do? He fights dirty. He kicks the guy in the nuts, bites his forearm, and throws sand in his face before letting the plane's propeller do the rest of the work. Indy's resourcefulness allows him to survive the encounter. And I mentioned abilities and skills. With abilities, we're talking about things that a character is naturally good at. Maybe they can take a beating like Rocky, or they have a superpower like Spider-Man. And with skills, skills require time to master. Sword fighting, using the Force, dodging punches, these are all examples of skills, and they can end up being the difference in a battle. Alright, now before we wrap things up, I want to share with you some quick tips for writing better fight scenes. First tip is to determine your fight's place within the story. And this will help you focus your battle's details, and it'll help you decide the battle's outcome. This will also help you set limits, such as how much blood a character can lose, or whether they can suffer a major injury that requires recovery time. Second tip is to set an injury goal. And this means that you want to decide what kind of physical impact this fight will have on the characters. Will they be hurt? Will they suffer a serious injury or wound? Will they die? Will they escape? Typically, the threat of injury will determine the turning points in a battle. If things start off as a fist fight, then somebody grabs a gun, that's a turning point. Then if the gunman runs out of ammo, that's another turning point. Keep these turning points in mind, and also decide if your fight will end with serious injury or death. If you know how the fight ends, it'll be easier to work out the details leading up to it. And then the last tip for today, when you're writing a fight scene, avoid using combat jargon and combat terminology. Instead, deliver sensory details that pull your audience into the story. Now, if you're writing a novel, you might be tempted to throw out technical terms to describe different fighting styles, techniques, attacks, and so on. However, in most cases, you're better off just focusing on the five senses and focusing on how characters experience the fight and react to its key moments. Remember, you want your audience to experience the fight. You don't want to take them out of it with technical language and jargon. So I hope this helps. Question of the day, what's your favorite fight scene from a story? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of either one of my books. Bad Parts is great if you like small town horror. It's about people trading away their sick and injured body parts in order to get healthy again. And then Entry Wounds is great if you like thrillers. It's about a guy who picks up a haunted gun and he cannot put it down until he kills 6 people with it. Also, be sure to check out my other videos, like, share, and subscribe. And as always, remember to keep on writing.